With the help of Hashem, we are learning Moed Katan Daf Yud Aleph. We're going to start on Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph, again from the Mishnah. We're going to be learning about cases where we differentiate between Maisa Uman versus Maisa Hedyet, meaning that there are certain activities that may be done only if it's done by either an unskilled person or the skilled person does it in an unprofessional way. We're going to learn about when we are addressing safety concerns. Those concerns must be attended to on Chol Hamoed. We're going to be learning an interesting concept that tools, that when using them, those tools make a lot of noise, however that's defined, that is prohibited to be done on Chol Hamoed by the decree of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. We'll see whether people accepted his decree or not. We're going to have some very interesting remarks made by Rav regarding eating fish. It begins related to Chol Hamoed. Actually, there's a very important Tosfos, Moed Katan Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, which is the only Tosfos on the Amud, quoted many times, that there are certain statements in Chazal for which we say, Nishtanu Hativim, that since human nature changed, those statements are no longer relevant as it pertains both to the statements regarding fish and how it's broadened and again quoted very often in many other areas throughout Shas. On Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, we're going to be starting the second chapter. The second chapter will continue to speak both about the Isur of doing work on Chol Hamoed and the Isur for a Avel, for someone who's in mourning, to do work. Now, the Isur Asiyus Malacha by an Avel is certainly Midrabanan. Therefore, there will be a Machloikes, as we'll see, where it plays out, whether the Isur Asiyus Malacha by Chol Hamoed is more Chamur, or Mamish the opposite, the Isur for an Avel to do work is more stringent versus the Isur Asiyus Malacha during Chol Hamoed. We're going to have many detailed applications of this prohibition on the mourner to do melacha, and then, God willing, we'll come back a little bit to Hilchos Chol Hamoed, and as we will learn that working and bettering real estate is usher to be done on Chol Hamoed to the property of the Jew, even if it's not being done by a Jew, even if the people that are working on the property are not getting paid per hour, but they're getting paid per job. And we'll see that normally that will make a difference. That is what we call now a kablan versus the schir yom. Nevertheless, even a kablan may not do work on the real estate of a Jew during Chol Hamoed, and much, much more. So let's go, Chevra, Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph. Let's quickly restart learning the Mishnah. Baruch atah Adino Eloheinu Malkeinu Shar Kol Yom Dvarim. Says the Mishnah, Oisin Michael Gagol Merpeses. One on Chol Hamoed should make a fence or a railing around the roof and around a porch. However, it only may be done Maisa Hedyet in an unprofessional manner. Avoloi Maisa Uman. What is important to point out over here is that building a building a railing or a fence around one's roof is a biblical obligation, and there's a big machloikas rishonim regarding what makkah is the Mishnah referring to. Some rishonim are of the opinion that if the makkah that we are referring to is the biblical makkah that has to be made, then it may even be made Maisa Uman. Our Mishnah is only referring to a scenario where al pi halacha, regarding the law of building a railing, you don't have to build a railing against that roof. And there are certain scenarios where halachically you don't have to build it, without getting into it right now. V'haraya, there is no obligation to build a railing around a porch, around the merpeses. And it's very important, according to those Rishonim, that again, there is still a minute possibility that someone might get hurt, and which is taka why you are allowed to do it. But on the other hand, do it in an unprofessional manner. An unprofessional manner, as the Gemara will point out, will suffice to afford the protection, but it's not a finished job. You'll have to come back to it and better it after Yom Tov. Other Rishonim are of the opinion, no, that our Mishnah is speaking both about the Mako Legag, which is Takechi of Midoraisa, and any other type of railing. Point B, that since it's danger related, it could be resolved even if it's not done professionally. And therefore, you don't need to have a professional railing because you solved the problem. You afforded the protection even by doing a Maisa Hedyet. Next in the Mishnah, shofin es hastakin, you are allowed to smear plaster. And let's go over cracks in an oven. We're coming back quickly to an oven. So the cracks in the oven, they have to be resolved. You smear the plaster. After they would smear the plaster, normally they would somehow press it down. So here the Mishnah says again that umagilin oisoy, you can only flatten it bimagila with a roller. The Gemara will clarify that it doesn't mean these words. It means that you can only flatten it with something that's a little bit like a roller, which is with a hand and a foot. In other words, finish that fixing in a maisa hediot manner, in an unskilled manner. There was a certain type of wooden block tool that used to be used to properly smooth out the plaster after you put it in the cracks. That may not be done. Here again, it's taka food related, and therefore, according to many, as we learned in the last year, you can even build an oven on Chol HaMoed. But the goal is in order to make food. A crack won't be good. You resolve the crack by putting in the plaster. And just finishing it unprofessionally suffices for the goal of now it's functional. But again, you don't do it in a professional way. However, the first white line in contrast meanings. Now we're going to learn safety-related areas in which you are allowed to address it even in a professional way, in a skilled manner. So hatzir, when it comes to the fixing of the pivot, the hatzinoid or to the socket, the hakoida to the lintel, the haminoil to the lock, the hamaftech to the key. In other words, all parts of the gates of the doors in which if it's broken, there is a possibility, there is a way for a thief to walk into the house. Here, this is a much bigger danger to the point where we dafka want to get the pro to fix it. So, shenishberu, if it was broken, then misakran b'moed, misakran means maisa uman. Get the most professional guy to fix it in the best of manners. Again, because here, let's use the heter of, it falls under the category of davar ha'aved. If you will not fix it, and there's going to be a geneva, that's loss of principle. However, there's a however. But don't allow for this to be done when you could have fixed it prior to Yontif. And you purposefully said, listen, Chol HaMoed, anyways, I can't go to work. I'm going to have more free time. Let me delay this for Chol HaMoed. Whoa, let's be consistent. If you take security seriously, you would have fixed it prior. You using Chol HaMoed to do work is something that we frown upon. Now, the poil mamish, what were to happen if this genius didn't fix it before? What are we going to tell him that you should become vulnerable? The Mishnah is not speaking about after the fact. Let's leave that. The Mishnah is saying that people should remember nothing that could have been done prior to Yom Tov is allowed to be delayed purposefully to be done on Chol HaMoed. And that's halachically. And even and on the same track, security-related manners, like shame on you. Why would you delay it? There's a security issue involved. Okay. Final din in the Mishnah. The chol chavashim, any food item that needs to be pickled is shuhu yachol le'echol mehem b'moed, that if you begin the pickling process, it will finish on Chol HaMoed. It's not something that if you begin to pickle it on Chol HaMoed, then it's only going to be ready in 2 weeks. In other words, if you can only eat it in 2 weeks, so it's not an activity food related for the tzoyrech of Moed, for the festival, you can't do it. But as long as you could, not that you have to eat up all the pickles, but as long as it's going to be ready enough still on Chol HaMoed for it to be eaten or on Yom Tov, to be eaten on Chol HaMoed or on Yom Tov, then koivshan, you are allowed to make this pickling process. More details about how much we will have in the Gemara. Okay, the first thing in the Mishnah was regarding making this railing or this fence, both around the gag and around the porch. Let's clarify better what is considered an unskilled or an unprofessional railing. Rabbi Yosef says we had this above in a similar case. But Hutza v'dafna means a very flimsy fence made only out of the leaves and of palm trees, from twigs. In other words, this is a fence against. Whether you're going to learn this is the maika, that's mechoy, that's a mitzvah. Whether this is a case where there's a heter al pidin, you're building it still for safety. When this is enough, it's not going to last that long, but it resolves the issue. and come back after Yom Tov and build it properly. The Masnei Satana, we learned in a Brayso, this is not a contradiction, that even Sod B'Tzurah, you can make a pile of stones, which is a lot sturdier than the Hutz of a Daphne woven fence, but you cannot plaster it, you cannot put cement on it. Again, you start building it, it resolves the problem, whether the chiyuv mitzvah, whether perhaps the small chance that someone might end up going on this roof, which no one ever does, and they will see the fence, but you can't do it in a professional manner. Second in the Mishnah was regarding sealing a crack. Now, by the way, the sealing of the crack is not only oven related, but let's apply it by an oven. It's also if there's a crack in the roof and it's leaking in, you are allowed to plaster, fill in a crack. And now the literal reading of the Mishnah is and you can flatten it with a roller. You can flatten it with a roller and with your hand and with your foot, but not with that special professional machlot side. So the Gemara says, if you are even allowed to use an instrument, hashto b'magila amrat, that you are allowed, so b'yadu b'regel miboya, does the Mishnah have to say you can use your hand and your foot? That's the least professional manner. So the Gemara clarifies, you can fill in the cracks. Then you have to flatten out the plaster. You can do an activity that will be almost as good as using a roller, and that is using your hand, using your foot. And never to use a machalot sayim, not to use this real professional pressing block, and not even a roller. In other words, you have to really don't use kalim to finalize the job. And the underlying reason will always be because the goal of the Tzoydech Moed is resolved even if you did it in an unskilled manner. And therefore, that's the general rule, that if it's not directly food related, remember the Nemuka Yosef we quoted, if it's directly food related, you can do it in a skilled manner. No problem with my su'uman. Even if it's a little bit removed to food, like maybe building an oven, you can also do it in a skilled manner. The moment it's beyond that, then don't do it. Then don't do it in a skilled manner. And in our case, even though it's about the oven, you resolve the problem, finalize the fixing it after Yom Tov. Then the Mishnah spoke about your door that's broken. And it makes a lot of sense because like a door is broken here in the back. So you can fix it. And when you fix it in a more professional manner, you afford more protection. It's better. So all parts of the door, the pivot, the socket, the lintel, the key and the lock and the key, the Mishnah says that if they broke, you can fix them properly on Chol HaMoed. Problem is, here's the problem. We learned in a Mishnah, we will learn in a Mishnah, it says, Ad Yomov, until the days of Yochanan and Kohen Gadol, being that there are scenarios where you can do proper work, like over here, person's lock broke, so they would hire a locksmith. And how would he fix it? I don't know. He would bring his kalim. They can be, iron tools, and you can be hacking and knocking, right? We're going to learn again today, God willing, on top of Yud Beis, how normally working on real estate is the end of the world. We don't work on real estate, even if a goy is doing it for me, even if it's being done by a kabbalah, as we'll explain. We don't do that. But here you could at safety. So what happened was, so at times you walked in the streets in Yerushalayim and you heard the sounds of hammers banging. It's like in modern language, it would be when you live from a neighborhood, people are keeping Shabbos, there's no cars driving. It's a machai, you feel the rest. And if a car goes through, it's like machalol the ruach. So there was no noise of construction, but you would hear. And even the people that were doing it up into the times of Yochanan and Kohen Gadol was beheter. There are times that you can use, but he felt it's a chilul of the Chol HaMoed. Once people hear sounds of tools, construction, so he made a decree that you may not use tools, here are the words, that make a lot of noise. However, that's defined. The problem is that our Mishnah is way after these days. So, and there are certain parts of the door frame and of the lock and the key that the way to fix it in a skilled manner, will demand tools that will be noisy. So the Gemara says, like Kasha, the resolution will be kan b'denafachim. Rashi says a blacksmith whose tools are hammers and the like are taka very noisy. that is included in the prohibition of Yechon and Kohen Gadol. Our Mishnah is speaking about bidin, not gadi, which means a carpenter. A carpenter uses tools to fix doors that are not that noisy. Now, I know it's common that we make these differences, like say the Yeseda, we'll learn today, or Hefsid Meruba versus not. But whenever you hear these terms, everyone wonders, okay, where do you draw the line? Where would you draw the line over here? Very noisy versus not very noisy. Maskav la Rab Chizda, it doesn't make sense. What are you telling me that that's the way it should be? That only large noises may not be done and not large noises? Any person who needs to get something done will claim, well, but this is not that noisy. And you know what? They might not be wrong, because there's always something even noisier. It's something relative. We try to avoid that. Now, he did not refute the Gemara's answer. Rab Chizda rejects this. Our Mishnah that allows, speaking about the magoli, some sort of saw. You have to be a builder to appreciate this. There are certain tools, not an electric saw. I was speaking about the large saw, makes no noise. He considers it something that makes no noise. That is what you are allowed to do. Once it could be heard, it's a problem. A lot, a little. That is what's allowed. If you're using axes, which is what the takon of Yechon and Kohen Gadol was, that is something that may not be done. Now, Rav Papa gives another approach. He says, I'll tell you something. Our Mishnah is before the takana, before the gzeira of Yechon and Kohen Gadol. The other Mishnah that we just quoted in the Kasha, Ad Yom Fayipatish Make, is La'achar HaGzeira. Now, it's very important to remember the klal. It's called Mishnah Rishoina Loizaza Mimekayma. Remember, we had this many times. There are times that during the era, not many times, during the era of the Tanoim, the halacha changed. They first sided with one side, then they sided with the other side. They completely rejected some opinions. But since it was already in the Torah Shabal Peh, it never left. So even though there's a Mishnah that was written by Rabbeinu HaKadosh, it's normal that he would write an opinion that's no longer correct, which will be our Mishnah. The Mishnah says you can fix a lock and a key, etc., but really you can't. So why are you writing it? Because it was permitted, and that was part that was people used to review it by heart. Once it was part of the Mishnayos, you leave it in there. Ravashi has a final approach. Our Mishnah, right, follows Rabbi Yossi. The Mishnah that we quoted, Hoya Yamav Ad Yamav Hayipatish Make, follows the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. What is that? So Chevra, like this, we are putting together two different inyanim. Our Mishnah says that when it comes to the fixing of the door, you can do it like we said. You can do it. The Mishnah didn't say Maisa Hedyet, even Maisa Umen, which means you can fix it properly. You don't even have to make a shinui. Rabbi Yehuda, we know elsewhere, argues with our Mishnah. You can fix a lock and a key, but you have to do it with a shinui. Now, this has nothing to do with the concept of the takon of Yechon and Kohen Gadol. We know that. What Rav Ashi is suggesting is that since we know our Mishnah is not Rabbi Yehuda, because again, our Mishnah is allowing you to fix it properly without making a shinui. It doesn't have to be Maisa Hedyet. We know that there is another Tana, Rabbi Yehuda, that argues with it. Says Rav Ashi, let's put these two things together. Rabbi Yehuda holds that they made a takana and everyone accepted it. And he was the author of the Mishnah that writes that only until the days of Yechon and Kohen Gadol were you allowed to do these constructions, and afterwards you may not do it. Rabbi Yossi holds that even though Yechon and Kohen Gadol made this decree, people did not accept it. And if people don't accept a takana of a beis din, it's not going to become part of binding halacha. That's a chiddush. That the Mishnah that we quoted Ad Yama Fayeh Patish Makev is only Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. Again, they never ever argued anywhere explicitly about the degree of Yechon and Kohen Gadol. Say then, but we are linking one with the other. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi that man tana shinui b'mayid b'davar ha'aved. Davar ha'aved this is a great example. If you're not going to fix your lock and a ganaf will break in, he's going to steal things. She's going to steal things. That's called loss of principle. Yet Rabbi Yehuda holds that even by a davar ha'avid, you have to make a shinui. And he pointed out that's not everyone's opinion. It's not like Rabbi Yossi, who is the author of our Mishnah. And our Mishnah, he did not say such a thing. Our Mishnah shita is you fix it, Maisa Uman, without a shinui. And again, Therefore, says Rav Ashi, once we know there is a machlokes regarding the fixing of the locks, we're going to link it and we're going to create another machlokes, so to say. This will clarify that only Rabbi Yehuda subscribes that people accepted the takana of Yechon and Kohen Gadol, and our Mishnah Rabbi Yossi holds that even though Yechon and Kohen Gadol did not like hearing sounds and noises of construction in Yerushalayim, and he says, even if it's allowed, if it's noisy, not anymore, people rejected it and coming back. And yeah, you can make noise and you're not dafka making noise. Fix the lock the way you need to fix it. And if it's noisy, zol zayin, no problem. Okay. Amar Avinu. Keman madlina hoidna kaviyusa dedasha. According to whose opinion, nowadays, if someone's lintel fell off, I never saw a lintel falling off, but obviously they built otherwise. This is a big job. And the fact is that if a lintel, which is pasha the doorway, which is like the door collapses, nowadays, if that happened, you can fix it. It's like Rabbi Yossi. Because if we were to paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, then that type of fixing would be noisy. That's not so pasha to fix the lintel, fix it and then put back the door. It's like everything. Because we follow like Rabbi Yossi. This you do on Yom Tov. Okay. Next. The next thing in the Mishnah was regarding pickled foods. Kevashim, as long as shahu yachal echel b'mayid, you are allowed to pickle it. Now, what's important will be, the big question is, that's what the Gemara is addressing without mentioning it by name, how much can I pickle? Can I make food on Chol Hamoed for afterwards? Answer is no. So is there any limitation of how much I can pickle? Whether you're pickling pickles, whether you're pickling any other item, yeah. Huh? The issue is that, let's go back, pickling stuff on Shabbos and Yom Tov is also. What's the issur of pickling? What's the issur of pickling? We had this.
It's because you're preparing it. You're not going to be able to eat it then, right? You're going to be
No. What malacha of the lamates malachas is pickling? Is it included in bishul? Could be. Just in Hilchas Shabbos. Whatever there is an issur. It's connected to one of the lamates malachas, but you're doing it for Yom Tov. Now, let me tell you why maybe I would be allowed to pickle a lot. Because when I pickle, I'm only going to eat 2 pickles. I'm going to make 50 pickles. But I'm going to eat from the 50 pickles, 2 of them. Maybe I'm eating this one. Now, if that would be a tircha yeseda, which it's not, and anyways doing it, that is really going to be the underlying theme of the next Gemara. So we begin with the story. There was a name of a river called Bedisa that was in the location called Levoy. The river of Levoy, Bedisa Levoy. What happened there was, and we mentioned it yesterday when we spoke about people watering their fields for fish. Certain rivers are filled with fish. It's like Port of Vu by fish is amazing. And whenever these waters overflow on dry land, it's Gan Eden, because it's like the mun. You understand? The water overflows, it comes back, and there's like, God is giving you, just go and get it. That happened on Chol Hamoed. And the river banks were filled with fish. Again, the issue here is they're going to get not one fish alone. They collected fish. Even if they would only eat until all 3 meals a day fish, there would be leftover fish. What happened was Asal Kula Alma, everyone went of the city, Sud, they trapped it. It's just they didn't trap. It was like a gift from God, like the emissaries, the toys that way. They picked it up. Aisu Kavra, they brought it home. Now the thing is, you have a lot of fish at home. Whatever you can eat, you can eat. Whatever you can eat, at a point will spoil. The solution then of preservation, they didn't have a freezer, they didn't have a fridge, is that they would salt it. Similar to pickling it. So the question is, how many of them can you salt? So says the Gemara, Rava holds that you can salt all of them. Amalei Abaya, hold on, how can you salt all of them? Abaya tells Rava, did we not learn in our Mishnah, Kavashim, only shuhu yachal le'echel mehem b'moed. You can only pickle that which you can eat. But that which you can't eat, you can't pickle. So Amalei, to which Rava responded to Abaya, keeping the meikaradai. When they brought it to eat. Right? No, the fact is they brought it to eat. Now, maybe the argument could have been they shouldn't have brought it all in the house, but it's already a fact. They already collected it all. Okay, let's work it through. So what are you suggesting? Not to pickle all of it. You're going to lose. Davar ha'avet. It's like business. So if you won't salt it, then paste, psade, it's gonna spoil. And therefore, it becomes like business that you are allowed to engage in if there's going to be a loss. And by the way, this isn't only a loss of profit, this will be a loss of principle, and that's why Vishadi. Now there's going to be another version of the story which expands the heter. Because according to this version, if someone would have asked Rava, can I collect more fish than needed for Yom Tov? He would have said no. He said, since you already have it in your house, you already have it, make sure you don't lose it. The other version was that they asked the Shaila. They told Rava, we heard that on the riverbanks, there's piles of parnasa. Are we allowed to gather as much as we could? And Rava L'chatzchila said yes. Shari luhu Rava. Rava allowed them, Meitzar, Meizal, Aisuyu, Mimlach, to go and to take as many as they could and to bring it home and to salt all of them. That's a bigger chiddush. And here again, Amalei Abaya. What does it not say in our Mishnah that kavashim, that when it comes to pickling, only shuhu yachal echel mehem, right? B'moyed, only then koifshan tanan? Question mark. So Amalei responds, Rava to Abaya, a gavaldika answer, like I mentioned with the pickles. If they would have done something, if salting it means that whatever is salted cannot be eaten b'moyed, that's a problem. When you put salt on a fish, which solves the spoiling issue, you are able to eat it even though it's packed in salt, as long as you squeeze out the juice. The way it was, dried salty fish is still edible, which means that I'm unable to eat 100 fish, but all of these fish are edible. And I can choose whichever one I want during Yom Tov. As long as it's shayich to eat from them, you are allowed to gather all of them and salt all of them. Since misachli agav itzitza, true that when they are moist and salted, they are inedible. But you are able to squeeze them out. Itzitza means to be moitzitz. As long as you squeeze out the juice, even though they're salty, it's edible. So therefore, you can do them all. Kiha d'shmuel of the lay shishin itzatzei, someone had very salted fish. Again, they did it to preserve it, but they needed fish. Shmuel understood that if you squeeze it out 60 times, which means you really dry it out, it's edible as is. Shmuel once had a fish squeezed 60 times and he ate it. And another story, Rava Ikla Lebeiresh Galusa and Avdu Lei Shitin Itzatzeh, that Reish Galusa had a lot of fish. Today they took it out of the freezer. Then they had preserved fish and they wanted to serve it right away. There's no way that you get rid of the salt. It doesn't matter. You just have to get rid of the liquid. So they pressed it 60 times and he ate it. Another story, Rav once went to the house of Rav Shapir. And Aisu Lekamayu, they brought for the great Rav a certain fish that a third of it was boiled, was bishula. A third of it was salted. Again, salted fish is inedible, the way they salted it then. But again, we're saying now, say it's only inedible if it's moist. A third of it was tavia, was broiled, and he ate it. So coming back to our story, since salting it does not make it inedible for chalamayit, even though you don't need all of it, you're allowed to do it. And again, there's a money loss involved. God sent you the fish. Take as much fish as you want.
Rabbi, how is the loss of profit ever not considered commerce? Like,
How was what?
Like in terms of the principle versus profit, if you're at risk of losing profit, and so you would say, I'm not going to do something, can't you always just say, oh, it's commerce, it's business? And then there's like a header, like blanket header?
Yeah, it has to be something that's merchandisable. Certain things are not merchandisable. Bottom line is, Ariel, what you're beginning to see is that people do many activities on Cholamoyed. That's why before learning Masechtas Moed Katan, most people think Cholamoyed, is basically a day which you can do malacha. Maybe there's some restrictions. They heard about some restrictions. We're coming from the opposite direction. We're saying Cholamoyed is a day that's usher to do malacha like Shabbos and Yom Tov, but you find heterim. We do almost everything. Davar Avid. And the other heterim.
You're talking about a future project profit. It's not that. It's not like I have a business of.
Okay, so what we said yesterday, which is very important, is that the machlokes tanoim, Rav Meir, Rav Yehuda, and we paskin that davar ha'aved is only when you're going to lose principle, is only if what you are doing is asur midoraisa. If what you're doing is not asur midoraisa, which is commerce, then we are allowed to say l'kula alma there's a potential profit to be made. I don't want to lose the profit, which is the story. There was fish, not gathering the fish chaval. Gather how much? As much as you want. It's not b'chlal tzorech hamoed. No, salt it. You can eat all of it. You're finding a tatum. Let's go weiter.
Is there a thought now in Chol Moed not to cook too much?
So clear, that's what we're saying. We're saying that what we're saying from my story is that if you are cooking pot roast, and I know that I'm only going to eat half of it, we're learning now you could do it, as long as all of what you are cooking, any part of it is edible, you are allowed to do it. What you may not do is begin a process which will make the food now inedible. It will only become edible in a week. In a week, it's after Yom Tov. That is what you're not allowed to do.
So the point of the Ikad Amri is that the salted fish were actually editable. That's the point.
Since it's shaykh to eat it, even though you have to do a further step. So therefore, that's what David is saying. Even though you began a process, you know you cannot eat all of it, but you did not render it completely inedible. It's salted inedible and squeeze it. Okay, now 4 statements of Rav, and this will conclude the page. Number 1, Amarav, statement number 1. Amali Adot Sayado. So now that we're speaking about fish, he quoted 4 statements from Ada the fisherman. Number 1, look at the statement. Kavra Samuch Lemisrechei. A fish right prior to it getting spoiled. That is when the fish is at its best. When is the best time to eat a fish? Not when you freshly take it out of water. Best time to eat the fish is right before it's about to get spoiled.
Yeah, I don't know about this these days, Rabbi. Maybe that's what do you call it? That it changed?
Oh, Tazoi, it's amazing. Look how important Moed Katan was. This is the Tosfos that's quoted throughout. The only place. Says Tosfos, it's not so. Says Tosfos, look inside. Ubizman hazeh, by kavra samach lemisrechei malei. The best. Ubizman hazeh, toifsim sakana lemechal samach lesirchaim. Nowadays, Tosfos says, not only is it not the best, guys, if someone eats spoiled fish, oy gavalt, he calls it a danger. Sakana. And even though now you don't taste that it's spoiled, if it's about to get spoiled, it's a sakana. So how do you resolve that? And another statement that we're going to have in 2 lines, the Amar B'Samuch, the Mala will say that what it means in a moment is not true. Look at the lines of Tosfos. V'shema nishtanu. Nishtanu means this changed. Torah is eternal, but the human biology changed. And therefore, for us, it's a sakana. Kamoi, look at this. Many medicinal therapies that we find throughout Shas. Now, guys, we already quoted when we learned a few times the sugyas, right? That there's already a takanas hakadmoinim, which comes from the times of the go'oinim, that we're not allowed to practice the medicines in the Talmud, but they gave other reasons. They said because we don't know exactly what it meant. We also don't know the right measurements, and therefore it might not work, and people are going to be moitzi laz. But Tosfos says that even if you know what you're doing, since we changed, the world changed, the Torah is true, it's no longer applicable. This is a very important statement, and it's used all the way down into halacha, and we use it using just adding the words neshtanu hativin. The Tosfos use the words neshtanu. What he means by neshtanu is nature changed. Something in the world changed. Let's go back in the Gemara. Statement.
So, Rabbi, does that mean the dark bread, the coarse, like with that's really healthier than the white bread, which was in the Gemara really the white bread is healthier?
Okay, so it could be. In other words, in times of the Gemara, the less of the bran you had in the food, the healthier it was by far. Today, many doctors will advocate for you to eat whole. But my vart Danny was Yeshleimar is that the Gemara Chazal throughout says that bran and barley is Michael Behema. I think when people are holier, when a person is a Adam, a real Ruchnisdika Adam, for that person, the white flour is the best flour. The more Behemish I become, so a Behema is eating food of Adam, for me, it's not healthy. For you, you're a Behema, eat bran. The more the bran, the better. Okay, weiter. For Amar Rav, Aliyah Ada, the fisherman told me, look at the statement. This is beautiful. Kavra, tavya, ba'achua. Broil fish with the brother. Who's the brother of fish? Salt, because it lives in salt water. Now, what do you do with freshwater fish? I don't know. He's speaking about saltwater fish. It's good to broil it with its brother, with salt. And asuke. And you should, after it's broiled, it was advantageous to right away place the fish for a moment in its father. Who's the father of fish? Water. Place it in water. Would you broil it with its brother? You then soak it for a moment. They would put it in cold water and take it out with its father. Then you would eat it with its son. Who's the son of fish? Brine. Brine comes out of the fish. Eat it with its son. And then ishtei alei avu, and drink it with its father, which means it's very healthy to drink water after you eat fish. Statement number 3. V'amarav, amaliyad tzayada, kavra, when you eat fish and you eat tachalei kres and v'chalava and you drink milk, then we have to break the general rule. The general rule is that after one eats for a certain small amount of time, it's actually very healthy not to do exercise, like to be meyushav. Then work it off. Here, the opposite. Eating these 3 things together, then litoin gufa, it's healthy to burden your body. Be very active and don't burden your bed, which don't lay down afterwards. Now, by the way, there's many things. First of all, we learned that if a person doesn't walk daladamas after they eat, it's really unhealthy. We're not talking about that. You should always walk a little bit before going to bed after eating, even on an airplane. We spoke about that. We're speaking about, we know this, but mamash from our teva, people who like working out. It's hard to work out when you have a full stomach. You almost can go jog. You know, it's hard to do movement. After eating these 3, the fish, cress, and milk, it's good for the body to exercise it. Now,
What is cress?
veggie, Kevan, can you put a picture of cress on the shkoyach, on the screen? V'amar li Rav, Amar li adat sayada, final statement. Kavra tachli v'chalav, again, when you have fish and cress and milk. So what is the ideal liquid to drink afterwards? Maya, to drink water and not to drink beer. And if you don't have water and the choice is between beer and wine, then drink beer and don't drink wine. Now I want you to know that kiyadua, that in Shulchan Aruch Siman Pei Zayin, only the Beis Yosef, we know from Chazal that having fish and meat is considered dangerous. Here again, nishtanu hativim or not, but that's accepted in halacha that we don't separate them the way we separate meat and milk, but we don't eat them on the same keli together. We don't use the same utensils. You don't put on your Shabbos plate fish and shalom. The Beis Yosef in Siman Pei Zayin, I think, writes that you don't eat fish and milk. And as the Taz writes and many others, that it was a mistaken print, that Amon never brings it down. So this whole sugya of whether you can have it together or not, some people link it to these statements over here. Now, by the way, it doesn't mean that we're speaking about eating fish and milk. You can have fish and milk in the same meal. You just don't eat it together. So could be he means having fish, but you see, there's something about the fish. If you are going to source it back over here, if that was not a mistake, this would be the only place. I'm not saying this because we know all the other places, but the great people who knew it all said, if there's any source, Moed Katan daf Yud Aleph, Chevra, Hadron Allah, we will come back to you, Mashkin Beis HaShalchim, and let us start the 2nd chapter, Misha Hafach. Now, what we are introducing in the 2nd chapter, and it's really going to be focused on the 3rd chapter, are the laws of Avelus, the laws of mourning. Very importantly, like we mentioned quickly in our introduction, Isur Melach and Chalamoid is really a 4-way machlokes rishonim, but generally machlokes whether it's midorais or midrabanan. Isur Melacha for an avel, even if avelus is at times midoiraisa, which is the opinion of many, the Isur Melacha of an avel is only midrabanan. Let's leave it at that. That's no one debates that. The Isur Melacha of an avel, kula alma is only midrabanan, even when and even if avelus is midoiraisa. The example that we are using over here will be as follows. When you harvest olives, the first step was you would place them in a vat for them to become soft, prior to which you would not put them in the base habad, you would not squeeze them. Once they are soft, the seder was you would turn them over and you would place them, you would move them, and you would place them in the vat and you would press it. Now, at least pressing, let's go, who asked that question before? It was David. Pressing olives is dash, right? That's an isur daraisa from the lama. It's threshing. You're not allowed to press the juice out of the olive. The problem here is that once the olive reached this phase where you turn them over, If you will not squeeze them right now, it's going to spoil quickly. That's called a davar ha'avid. Back to the davar ha'avid. So it's an isur malacha, dash. You're not allowed to press things on Shabbos. Therefore, you can't press them on Chol HaMoed, whether deraisa or derabanan. That's a davar ha'avid. But here is the nuance. When you pressed it, you would put the beam on it, and there would be the first pressing. Almost all of the oil will come out. Then, if there would not be any restrictions, halachic restrictions to work, you would turn it over again. You would squeeze it out again. Maybe you would squeeze it out a third time. You would squeeze it all out. Community goal fundraisers. They schlep out of you, and then they squeeze you, and then they squeeze you again. But that's already a little amount. So whenever we speak about doing a malacha, here's where we introduce the difference between a big loss versus a little loss. Let's read the Mishnah. If the olives were already softened in the vat and they were already turned over, it is this point and on that the clock is ticking. In other words, if you're not going to quickly now press it, it will spoil. But the Iru Evel, the person now became, God forbid, became a mourner. And just to say it once, now we'll learn more details in the 3rd chapter. An Avel is someone who lost any one of the following 7 relatives, God forbid, a father or a mother, a brother or a sister, a son or a daughter, and a spouse. Now, now we're moving from Avelus, important chevra. The next line, the last line in the Amid, the last line in the last word in the line. Oines, Rashi writes, we're back to Chol HaMoed. You were working before Yom Tov. You were not planning to leave this stage for Chol HaMoed. That's another problem. Whenever you had work that could have been done prior to Chol HaMoed and you left it purposefully to do it on Chol HaMoed, you may not do it. No, you were doing the steps. If an oinus would not have happened, if something out of your control would not have happened, you would have been able to press it before Yom Tov began. But something out of your control happened. Now, on Yom Tov, you may not do it, but now it's Chol HaMoed, and the clock is ticking. If you're not going to do it today, by the after Yom Tov, you're done. All of that is spoiled. Or shehitiyu poyalim. There's a specific oinus that we're mentioning, and that is you hired workers. People are familiar with this. It was out of Yom Tov. It could have been done. The workers didn't come to work. They tricked you. They didn't come. It happens often. And now, certain things, you didn't paint, you'll paint later. No. If you're not going to do this, it will spoil. Now, the challenge in the Mishnah is that when the Mishnah says what you are allowed and what you're not allowed to do, the Mishnah is addressing l'choira. The Mishnah is addressing Chol HaMoed. The Mishnah is not going back to the Avel. And the Gemara is going to have this machlokes whether we're more machmir by the Avel or whether we're more lenient by the Avel. But let's go to Chol HaMoed. So for Chol HaMoed, you are allowed to put the press once, squeeze it out once, like we mentioned. That's the big davar ha'aved. But you can't do it more than once. If you were to press it 2, 3, 4, or 5 times, you would squeeze out a little bit of oil. Davar ha'aved? No. That's already called a little loss. Draw the line. I know we use the words hefsid meruba, but the words that are used by the Rishonim here is pseida yiseda versus stam pseida. So there's loss and there's a lot of loss. A lot of loss, good. Davar ha'aved is mutter. So that's the first Mishnah in the Masechta. Davar ha'aved is mutter until tircha yiseda. This is called tircha yiseda. But still, see, we're balancing. The first press you can do. Rabbi Yosi is lenient. And he says that zoyleif, which means you can pour it again into the press, vigoimer, and finish pressing it, get all of the juices out. Press it twice, press it thrice. And not only that, no shinoi is needed. And not only that, according to some, that when you finish pressing the oil, you would put it now in the oil vat and you would seal it. Now here also you can argue this part of the sealing, again, it should be fresh. Maybe do that in an unusual manner. Nothing has to be done in an unusual manner. Even the guff, even the sealing, the closing of the final packaging could be done in kedarto. Beautiful. No, it's Rabbi Yosi holds you can go until the end. Now, the problem is that what the Mishnah mentioned, the Mishnah spoke about 2 cases, an avel, Chol HaMoed. The Mishnah's answer of what you could do, machlokes, but what you can do is only addressing Chol HaMoed. So asks the Gemara, Pasach be'evel. You began speaking about the avel. You gave the second case, the oinus is on Chol HaMoed. The Mishnah only spoke about what you could or cannot do, Rabbi Yehuda on Chol HaMoed. But what should an avel do? Machloikis min hakotze el hakotze. Whether avelus is more chamur or more lenient. Amarav shisha b'rei deravidi zoy soy meres. Aha, zoy soy meres. That even devarim hamutarim b'moyed asurim imei evloy. Which means if you're an avel, you can't even do it the first time. Oy gewalt. Rav Ashi says the opposite. Rav Ashi yom loy mi boy kamer. Loy mi boy b'mei evloy. Demedrabananu. Rav Ashi is not saying that avelus is midrabanan. That's a big topic. Guys know how to type his words. Rav Ashi is saying that even if and when avelus is mido oiraisa, but avelus mido oiraisa does not restrict you from working. The isur melacha of a avel, according to everyone, is midrabanan. Avelus is midrabanan. It's allowed. Avada, it's allowed. But afilu b'moyed, even on cholamoyed, the isur melacha mido oiraisa. Now this is great, according to the many Rishonim that hold, indeed, midoiraisa. Even the Rishonim, my friend, that hold strongly that the issue of working a chalamoid is midrabanan, still, because there is a asmachta, so sometimes we refer to it as midoiraisa, but it's a dachuk. And this is one of the sources that strongly indicate that it's also midoiraisa. That's why only b'makim say the shara rabbanan. In other words, which is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the first press. And not the second press. Okay. Tanya kavase Rabbi Shisha b'rei Ravidi that avelus is more chamur. You may not even press it the first time. It says in a braisa, the following things could be done for a mourner. The hell you hear? For a mourner means the mourner may not do it. Someone else can do it for him. And these are the examples. Which is that Zaysav Hafuchim, that if his olives were already in the stage where they were after turned over, prior to the first press, now the clock is ticking, then others can squeeze it for him. Clear. Others means he can never do it. Our Mishnah says that he can do it. That's only on Cholamoy. Or other examples, Vekadoi loguf, if you have to seal the barrel of oil. Again, if you won't seal it, then it's going to spoil. Others can seal it properly. He may not. Flax used to be soaked in a mishra, in some sort of fat, and that was part of the process of turning the flax into linen. So again, if it's soaking, if you don't remove it, it's going to get ruined. Other people can remove it. Or if it's similar, if you have wool and you had it in a dyeing barrel, you're coloring it, and again, you can't leave it in there too long. So other people can remove the tzimrei lahalis min hayoida. Another example, umarbitzim sodeo. Remember, there's watering and then there's sprinkling water. Others can sprinkle water on his field once mishatagia oinas hamayim shaloi. And all of these cases, if this activity will not be done, there's going to be chevra, not just a loss, a pseida yiseda. Yet only others. So that's a Tanya Kavasa the Rabshish. Now, guys, now that we quoted the Braisa, what we're learning now, we're going to be weaving a Braisa, and every now and then the Gemara interrupts, and it's good to know what's the Tana, what's the Amoyda. Invited in the Braisa. Rebbe Yehuda Oymen. Another thing that others can do for him. If he already has a plowed field, like Chaval, it's plowed already. Now is the time to sow, S-O-W. Others can sow it for him. Or Visada Ho'imedes Lapishtan. If now it's the time to plant the flax. In other words, there are certain activities in the world of agriculture that is called time sensitive. If it won't be done, you'll lose the season. Others can do it for him. Amrullah, so they told Rabbi Yehuda, why? It's not time sensitive. What are you talking about? Guys, what's the maximum time? We're speaking about a week, maximum, right? We're going to learn more details. There are many stages in Avelus, but the Isur Melach is only during the time of Aninus, we'll explain that later, and during the times of the Shiva. After the Shiva, even during the Shloishim, an Avil can go back. There's no Isur Melach. So you think about a week. So it says the Chachamim told him, if you're not going to plant it this week, so it's not going to be part of the early seasoned plants. But Tizra Ba'aful, many people plant a little bit later. There is no Seder Meruba if it won't be done now. And similarly, Tizra Ba'pishtan, if you're not going to plant now the flax, and that he agreed that planting Pishtan has a very small window. Even if you're going to lose, you're not going to do it during the week of Shiva, you won't be able to plant Pishtan, plant something else. Tizra Memin Acher. Now hold on, Rabbi Yehuda agrees with it, but Rabbi Yehuda holds that other things will not give you as much profit as Pishtan. or planting things a week later, that's called a pseida mu'ata, a little loss. So here the question is really whether a little loss or stama loss will allow others to work for you or not. That's the machlokes tanoim. But again, interestingly, both of these tanoim hold that the aval himself may never do it. However, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Oimer, that if there is no one else around, we paskin like this chevra, that if there's no one else around, an aval can do it himself. That zeisav afuchim. And ve'ein sham uman Elyahu, you can argue, anyone can put it on the bar. What are you talking about? No, there's no one skilled. You have to be skilled. If he's the most skilled person, or similarly in all the other cases. Or the first white line, says Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he himself can do it, but again, there's an issue of doing it in private, not to give the wrong impression, like a Marasayan, do it b'tzina. I want you to know that nowadays, it's very common that an oinen is told that he should write a document in which he gives over his business during the times of Aninus and Shiva to someone else, and therefore the business continues to run. That's the topic we're learning about. It's not even his. That's the best heter. It's a very common thing it's done today, because if he belongs to him, you have to start finding a tatum, even if he's not doing it. Like this machlokes, other people are going to do it, but if it's not hefsed meruba, then according to the chachamim, others can do it. We are lenient, but if we can circumvent this whole shaila, even the better. Let's go back. Yosef, this is all the Baraisa. Yosef al-Kain, or Yosef al-Kain, Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the second white line. If this aval, if this guy is in mourning, he is doing a service for the public, and other people are not as good as him. A great example would be a sapper, a barber. Right? Anyone can cut the hair, but then don't let me cut your hair. Maybe for Purim. You understand? So if this guy, the aval, he's the city's barber, or he's the balon, he is the bathhouse attendant. He knows how to give you a good kanak on your back during the shvitz. No one else can do it as good. Or any other activity he's doing for the public. And the end, it's this. And now it's before Yom Tov. Before Yom Tov, everyone has to take a haircut. Before Yom Tov, everyone goes to the bath. So it's not only about him losing the income, which is also taken into account, but there's going to be a public loss. We allow him to do the work. And by the way, that's not betzina, that's mamish public. He'll be cutting everyone's hair. Then we're speaking about an avil. So the Rashi keeps on writing 2 points. Number one, 3 lines under the Gemara, Kiven the Islay Pseida. Number one, he will lose the income. He's not losing principal, but he gets paid. Now is his high season. And number 2, the economic side of Rabban. That's very important. Okay, weiter. Next examples.
Rabbi,
there are people that work the land.
Does this imply that the mourner is more lenient than Chol HaMoed? Like, is this going along with more like what Rabashi was saying?
Yes, Danny. That's the machlokes. Yeah. Well, let me word what Danny is saying in my way. It's a kasha. How did the Gemara say that Tanya Kavase de Rab Shisha? How is this Braisa like Rab Shisha? Why didn't the Gemara say that, Danny, that Tanoim? This is a question. Okay, let's go back. Now, there is an aris. An aris is a shiur. A sharecropper means you own the land. I'm working on the land. The deal is that a certain percent of what grows goes to the owner. If I don't work, not only will I not have that part, but since you, the owner, only get a percent, you will also lose. A chachirin, right, or a chachir, that's ches chaf yudreish, means something similar, that I work the land. I have to give you a fixed amount. But listen to this. A chachir means I have to give you 50 pounds of potatoes. If I grow 1,000,000 pounds, I'll only have to give you 50. If all that grew was 50, I only have to give you 50. But if I don't even grow 50, I don't have to borrow money to pay it. By a chachir also, if I don't work the land and the land produces that little, the owner might lose, so someone else will lose. A kablan here means that you are paying me to work the land. But what happens if I don't work the land? You know what happens? Not only will I not get paid, but the land will produce less produce. Certain jobs, if the guy doesn't show up to work, the owner loses. So in these 3 cases, Harei Elu Yasu Acherem Bishvilam, that he himself may not work. Others can work for him. Why can others work for him? because there's going to be a loss also to the workers. Next case. These are people that own, what is it called here across the street? Universal. You are renting out cars. So you own donkeys, you own camels, you own boats, and you rent it out. Now, the question is, are you allowed to rent it out during your time of Avelus? Who's going to lose if you can't rent it out? Only you. The people will find another donkey. You can't work. But if the mourners themselves were already in service of someone else, or listen, guys, or if the animals of mourners are already hired out to someone else prior to their Avelus, now they are an oval, they can't stop working. Why can they not stop working, Yakir? Because the other person is going to lose. Since they will lose and other people will use, if you get paid for the day, means even if you are working in a city, other people don't even know that you're an oval, so there's no marasayan. But I cannot work when I'm an oval. I'm going to lose that day labor. So what? There are many other details over here. Rashi adds that we learned in Baba Kama that a day laborer is not a slave, and halachically, even if I committed myself to work for you for the whole day, I can quit noon. Okay, so stop working. If you can quit, stop working because you are an oval. But I'm doing someone else's work, even if I am kiboilus means I'm a kabbalah, and a kabbalah means that I'm not getting paid per day, I'm getting paid per job. Getting paid per job means that if I don't do it today, doesn't matter. I can do it tomorrow, I can do it the next week. Now the word afalpi is really counterintuitive. We're gonna amend it. But even if I'm a kabbalah, lo yaseh, there is no loss. The Gemara interrupts. The Gemara says, no. A kabbalah for sure cannot work, because if I'm a kabbalah to you, if I'm not going to work a week, there's no time pressure. I'm not going to lose. You're not going to lose. No. Are you telling me that I'm not kiboilus? I'm like almost self-employed. If I'm getting paid for the job, I'm for sure I cannot work. So you have to amend. If I'm working for you, I may not do it. Right, now we're going back to the Braisa. If I already contracted other people to work for me, not me, I'm a person, Reuven contracted Yankel. Yankel contracted, we have a Reuven in the Shulchan. Yankel contracted Chaim. And Chaim is working and now Yankel becomes an oval. Chaim is not an oval. Can Chaim work for the oval? So it depends. In his house, if he's working in the house of the oval, he may not do that. Rashi writes, Chshad. People don't know that you already hired him out before. People are going to hear noise in your house. They're going to think that you're working. But if the bias acher, so a person gave his clothing, let's say, to the dry cleaners, and God forbid they became an oval. The dry cleaners can do it because it's not under Yasu. Now comes the story. Let's chaparein. Neryoin, the son of Ravin, and Mar, that's the name. His name was Mar. Mar, the son of Ravacha, who was the son of Rava. They were partners. They owned in conjunction. One owned an ox, the other owned an ox. They had a plow attached to it, and they would rent out their animals to plow other people's fields. And Isra Bey Milsa, something happened, which means a loss happened to Mar. Mar became an oval. So Mar felt, my animal can no longer work for you. So what he did was, you know what Mar did? He removed his ox from the plow. Now that's a problem because his partner now had a loss, and the person for whom they were working also had a loss. So he removed his ox from the yoke. So the Gemara right away says, Omar Ravashi, how can someone as great as Mar, how was he allowed to do it? True that what an oval cannot take into account is his loss. Let him lose. So if his ox would have worked, he would have gotten paid. When he removed his ox, he's not getting paid. He's an oval. If it's only about him, Hitaka is not allowed to work. That Nehid, but he made for his partner to lose. He made the people for whom the oxen was leased out for, they lost. And Ravashi is quoting, we learned in a Braisa, as we just quoted, If the avel or the avel's animals were prior to him becoming an avel, were already hired out for someone else, then it may be done. Someone else is doing the work. He was not doing the work. It's mamish against the Baraisa. So now we're adding another layer. Answers the Gemara, who sabar? Mar. Why did Mar do it? Adam chashuv shani. Who? Madreges in Hilchas Avelos. If you are an Adam chashuv, then you have to adhere to a higher level, even though it's an Afyenim's cheshbon. This is a very rare instance where it's okay. Okay, we're going to start. I just want to say, as we began the laws of Avelos, that Hashem should bless us, that we're going to be spending basically until the end of Moed Katan. I mean, we're coming back to Chol HaMoed. Don't worry, back and forth. Avelos, that Kol HaLoimid, we should be yoitza all of morning by learning Kol HaLoimid, Teiras Avelos, and people that are right now in Avelos, that Hashem should give them the Nechama. And Mashiach should come, which is really the only Nechama, and Omach Hashem Dima. And may we see that with our eyes now. Amen.
Amen.